All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardinellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And wow, big news today. A big high-ranking economist that generally gives all of his advice and his consultations to Republican presidents has now decided he wants to push all of his energy to support a moderate and reasonable Democrat, presumably one named Andrew Yang, whom he has spoken about quite openly and positively in many forums. Cody, what's going on?
Well, I guess so we'll go back. I believe he actually wrote this letter. Let me check out the exact date. I want to say the 28th of October, so Monday of this week. Again, the guy's name, I'm going to butcher his name. I apologize. Greg Mankiw? Mancow. Anyway,
yeah.
Flip it over. Here's what he says. So he says, first, the Republican Party has largely become the party of Trump. Too many Republicans in Congress are willing, in the interest of protecting their jobs, to overlook Trump's misdeeds. I have no interest in... hold on. He says, just as too many Democrats were Clinton during his impeachment. He gets to dig in. I have no interest in associating myself with that behavior. Maybe someday the party will return to having honorable leaders like Bush, McCain, and Romney, yada, yada. Okay, but... Second paragraph, very interesting. Second, in Massachusetts, unenrolled voters can vote in either primary. The Democratic primary is at its crossroads, where it has to choose either a center-left candidate, Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Yang, or a far-left populist, Warren Sanders. As their nominee for president, I intend to help them choose the former. The latter proposes to move the country too far in the direction of heavy-handed state control, and doing so they attempt to, in the center right, to hold their noses and vote for Trump instead. Again, interesting, I guess, mildly. The first time I did a video talking about this individual, I didn't know this about him, and people in the comments let us know. For those of you who don't know, this guy, I guess you could say, literally wrote the book on macroeconomics right now.
At least the college textbook.
It's a textbook on it, but he's a very well-respected economist. I believe on top of that, I think someone told me in one of our comments, I don't want to overhype it, but like, if you go to Wikipedia and look up macroeconomics, like they cite his work. So, influential gentleman, all I'm trying to say. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that's street cred if the Wikipedia article cites you in order to justify what is considered settled science in the realm of economics. I mean, that's pretty crazy. It's like when Dana Lash gets in these arguments about gun control, and she literally says, I literally wrote the book on gun control. That's a strong and compelling argument, just like this guy literally is like, I wrote the book that you got your PhD based on from Harvard in economics. You know, that's, although now before we go and beef this guy up too, though, you and I had this argument before the show. Just because you got a PhD and you won a bunch of awards and you're an economist doesn't mean that I give you a ton of credence personally. Because don't forget, Robert Reich, all right, has his PhD in economics and teaches at Berkeley, and he says some really stupid stuff.
Your personal beefs aside, this guy is, I'm just pointing out, a person of note. And if you don't believe, I'm not trying to hype him up either. I'm just saying the reason why we're mentioning him is because he's a person of note, basically saying that he wants to support a more moderate Democrat. Again, what does that mean exactly? He mentioned like 5 people. This is a clip we're going to show from a brief speech he gave October 17th, and it's actually just one, kind of fascinating in general, but two, he mentions Andrew Yang and his freedom dividend plus VAT by name in it. So I'm going to get this clip rolling for a minute, and I wanted you guys to check this out.
I should note that the safety net described in either of these plans, which I view as equivalent, and therefore the difference not being important, the plan is really just a version of the negative income tax. Milton Friedman first proposed it in a book. I don't know if he probably wasn't the first, but I first read it in Milton Friedman's book, Capitalism and Freedom, back in 1962 was when he wrote it. I remember reading this as a student 40 years ago.
Wow.
And thinking it was a pretty good idea.
Okay.
And it turns out I was not alone in that judgment. A few years after that there was a open letter in 1968 signed by more than 1,000 economists endorsing a negative income tax plans along these lines. They didn't have particular numbers involved, but it was on the general principle of a negative income tax. And it was signed by such luminaries as James Tobin, Paul Samuelson, Peter Diamond, Martin Feldstein. Now, of course, they weren't all luminaries at the time, in 1968, but they became luminaries. So what Andrew Yang is proposing is basically a version of what these 1,000 economists endorsed back in 1968. There's a little difference. I think the 68 economists were talking about a tax on income. Andrew Yang is focused on consumption through the value-added tax. From my perspective, that's actually better because it doesn't distort the intertemporal incentive to save and invest.
Exactly.
But it's sort of it's I think morally equivalent in a lot of ways to what was being talked about by those 1,000 economists in 1968. Now you have to ask the question of, could 1,000 economists all be wrong? Well, yes, they could. So I have to admit that.
So I had to leave in that little economist joke. I thought that was adorable.
I love academic humor.
You could tell it was a room full of economists. Could 1,000 economists be wrong? But anyway, the reason why I want to show that clip is because I thought it was, one, interesting the points he's bringing up. Also, I guess really quickly, I want to put a little bit of context into what he was saying. Just a little bit more for you guys. He was speaking in reference. You can see this. He has this graph up here, the two possible social safety nets. Kind of contrasts the idea of having a more means-tested version versus a universal version. And he actually makes the case in this video that a means-tested version and a universal version of a safety net could be functionally the same, just procedurally different, and that
the procedure for the means tested one though was so much more harder to implement that it would be fraught with problems. So the universal version was better. That's what he says in the longer version of what he of that speech.
Of course, which say what you want. I thought that was fascinating, but you'll note it. And also, just for context, a negative income tax is essentially a universal basic income. It's like it's another way of looking at it. At the end of the year, the government gives you money instead of taking it. Like you know what I mean? It's the same thing. Anyway, and they are referencing a little bit there, I believe. They're talking about the movement in the 60s that culminated in Nixon actually almost passing UBI and not. However, if you want to talk about the idea of getting something like UBI into the White House, having one of the leading macroeconomists in the world renounce his party allegiance to the Republican Party to go to the Democratic Party to encourage something like this, this could be big, man. I mean,
this was George W. Bush's. He was a part of the CEA, which I think is like the Center for Economic Advisory. They basically put out. It was a cabinet position that was basically it was an advisory position. Sorry, it was basically started sometime in the 50s. To give direct consultation to the president on economics, on economic theory, and also on what economic action should be taken. Okay. And ever since the 50s, this group is the one that has provided most of the data as to whether your ideas in economics are good or not. And here's what we think you should do. All right. So this is a very influential position, and this is the guy that was advising George W. Bush.
I mean, it's funny.
He was advising our last Republican president before Donald Trump.
By the way, ironically enough, he's specifically citing not wanting to side with the progressives. I think the fact that he used to be George Bush's advisor probably don't play well with some parts of the Democratic Party. But like I said, it is really fascinating seeing someone who had been traditionally a Republican. I'm not gonna get into the weeds here, but just influential thinker saying, I want to help the Democrats find someone like an Andrew Yang, or he mentions multiple people, but you could see in that bit he actually, which I agree on. I think that's kind of one of the cool things about the VAT tax. I agree with him. I would probably say more so than the other way around is just the notion that the cool thing about using a value-added tax instead of an income tax is that a value-added tax is
consumption-based.
Exactly, and it does not punish, as he mentions, a couple of things like
it's consumption-based,
saving and investing and things like that. It doesn't punish you for doing those.
Like all of our taxes were consumption-based until that time in the 20s when all the corrupt congressmen got together on like Christmas weekend and formed an income tax, which then taxed our income and not our consumption, punishing work and actually disincentivizing work and incentivizing irresponsible economic behavior, all just for short-term gains of how much money we can make really fast off income taxes. It used to be considered unconstitutional to actually tax income. So anyway, it was music to my ears when he actually said, wow, you know what? I actually like Andrew Yang's, I've used actually way too much. I like Andrew Yang's idea of a VAT tax because it's a consumption-based tax.
I got to call myself out for probably doing it, and I got to call you out for just doing it.
What?
The value-added tax, not a VAT tax.
I'm
only bringing it up because I think I did it too. I caught myself halfway through.
But the VAT or the value-added tax?
I'm not going to let myself get away with it. I did the same thing. But I agree. And again, it's just if you're going to get something like UBI passed, it's going to take some radical changes. Getting traditionally conservative thinkers to come across and say, wow, yeah, man, this this might be it. Again, it is kind of one of the ironies. We were just doing a stream a little while ago, not too long ago, and somebody, and I'm not gonna get too far into it, but we heard the typical response of $1,000 a month. Isn't that like communism? And it's hilarious because like the people that actually are kind of like progressive and on the left hear that like $1,000 a month to everyone, even rich people. Isn't that just like libertarianism? Like I don't even know what you know what I mean. But there's always this, and I think that's kind of one of the things that makes it unique and stand out as an idea. Like you always say, like when everybody has some weird knee-jerk reaction to something that doesn't make sense, maybe there's just something behind it. And it is fascinating. I'll have the link so you guys can watch more of the video, the speech he was giving. But I think a lot of people are realizing, and you'll notice a lot of wealthy, capitalistic, entrepreneurial types are even saying, look, I can just see from where I am that it's not that we have to like redistribute the wealth, right? But it's like massive income disparity is going to be what will lead to unrest before anything else. There'll be mass civil unrest because of massive income disparity that just feels wrong to people, whether it is or isn't. Then there will be if, I don't know, Star Wars gets too political. You know what I mean? Like if they vote Sean Spicer off Dancing with the Stars, you know what I mean? Like people can say stuff like that's gonna be bad. If the income inequality gets too out of hand, too ridiculous, it continues up
solid
too much of a
Sean Spicer reference.
Exactly.
Dog.
But my point being, and I think that's what we're seeing, even traditionally more conservative leaning economic types looking at it and going, look, man, like we could find, because again, UBI, again, you'll notice is not some radical, like, well, we have to make it a level playing field. Everyone is, it's like, nah, it's really, Yang himself even says $12,000 a year is legitimately a number that you're not meant to, like, give up everything to live off of. It's supposed to just augment, subsidize, and help you play in the capitalist game of America. So that's why I think it's important and interesting. Sorry, long way of saying it. And I go too long always, but that was my point.
Well, all I was going to say is that there are very few mic drops that pique my interest. And if you can tell me the conservative consultant who actually gave advice in his cabinet to George Bush and wrote the macroeconomics book that they use in colleges now that contests traditional Keynesian economics, just endorsed Andrew Yang's freedom dividend. It just in my mind, there's really no more avenues that you can't shake out of that. That's a mic drop moment. You got George W. Bush's economic advisor now endorsing Andrew Yang's freedom dividend. Universal basic income is something that we need to look into seriously as Republicans. They would be wise to take this up as their flagship proposal instead of letting it be something that fringe candidate in the Democratic Party is championing. Make it be our thing like it originally was, not their thing like it's Andrew Yang's right now.
Exactly. And again, I don't want to get too lost in like just pure speculation, but like I said, just going back to the guy's note he posted, he mentions 4 candidates as the center-left candidates he would like to help the Democrats lean towards: Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and Andrew Yang. No one except for Andrew Yang is proposing something so dramatic to the economy and has such a forward-thinking and aggressive view on the economy as those. So,
yeah, good luck getting Pete Buttigieg, who literally scoffed at it and said, "Oh, well, it's definitely interesting." Pete Buttigieg scoffed at it. Klobuchar was going after Andrew Yang, and was it the last debate or the one before the last debate where they kind of had their little spat?
I remember exactly, but one of the
so
gotta admit these debates kind of put together, man. They are just
same, swing and a miss on Buttigieg, George Manikow, or however you say your name.
I know, we can't pronounce it. Apologies.
George M. Swing and a miss on Buttigieg. Swing and a miss on Klobuchar. Who's the other one on his list?
Well,
Joe Biden?
I don't want to paint this guy, however, as like only UBI. I'm just saying he said that Andrew Yang was interesting. And I just mean as far as like a lot of these people don't really seem to have other candidates have that much on their books as what they want to do in general with the economy. Like, I really don't know. Yeah, what is Pete Buttigieg's plan for the economy? Do you know? He's not super aggressive in promoting it. Like, exactly. It's not like Andrew Yang is a plan for the economy. He's really aggressive in promoting. I'm thinking economists would be attracted to that. I'm just saying, because the more you think about it, it is going to take something radical to get like Andrew Yang through and a UBI through. Something radical like pulling traditionally conservative thinkers over to your side to say, hey, that's a good idea. We should try it. Yeah. And this could, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds, but like I said, the guy does mention Yang by name here. The guy does mention Yang by name on a stage where he actually says, hey, I agree with this movement from the 60s that tried doing this, and I think Yang just wants to do a better version of it, so that's pretty cool. interesting thing. Don't want to get, again, I don't want to, this isn't the, be all end all, oh my God, Yang's going to win kind of thing. But it is, you're going to need some pretty interesting allies to do something like shock the world, win the Democratic primary, get UBI passed in America. You're going to need some interesting allies. This could be one of them, man. This could be one of them.
You're going to need some interesting allies. This could be one of them. Actually, I think that's a perfect way of summing up this argument. And I got to say, coming from the, more socially liberal but very fiscally conservative side, holy crap, you just got one of the original gangsters of current original gangsters of fiscal conservatives on your side. In fact, from what I understand, he won an award of being the most popular conservative economist under the age of 60. Sometime recently, I was reading that in his Wikipedia article. And I got to tell you, when you're endorsing an idea that Milton Friedman wrote about, as he said in 1962, it was called the negative income tax back then, but that's basically what the freedom dividend is. Okay. When you're the one whose flagship proposal is what Milton Friedman wrote about, what Richard Nixon's Congress passed, what red state Alaska currently does, and what George Bush's economic advisor currently is willing to eschew his party in order to support, I think you've got a winning economic idea. Call me crazy, you know what I'm saying? But from a fiscally conservative angle, I think you've got a winning idea. So anyway, let us know what you guys think. Let us know what you guys think this will actually mean for Andrew Yang's campaign. Will it move the needle at all? It does for somebody like me, but I know that I'm an odd duck. Let us know what it does for you by commenting below. Make sure if you haven't had a chance to like this video yet, you like it. If you want to contribute to the channel, make sure that you either purchase a hat on problemsolverpolitics.com or you check out the PayPal link in the description, or you hang out with us on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we do live streams and we answer your calls. You can always leave us a voicemail at 1-833-PSP radio to let us know what you think, and we'll hopefully be able to return that voicemail on one of these videos. This is Problem Solver Politics. We'll see you in the next video.